I believe everyone has a story to tell. And I believe everyone deserves a little pampering. Welcome to Mannies with Grannies. I'm your host, Tiffany Marino. Join me while I sit down with a woman over 70 and get to know her while giving her a manicure. Welcome to this episode of Mannies with Grannies. Today, I'm here with the lovely Nancy Cashman.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad to be here with you today. The first time we came to the Sweets at Rouse, we met you that day.
Oh,
and
yes.
I could tell that it was just going to be so fun to have you on.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice of you.
How are we feeling today?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good.
You were telling me a little bit about your education history earlier.
Well, I grew up in Warren, and I am second of 8 children. And so I had lots of brothers and sisters, lots of activity. And when I graduated, I went to New York City. Well, I went to another school, but I went to Colby Junior. And then I went to nursing in Columbia University. And I loved New York. I love New York. I lived in the Village, and I had a beat-up old apartment. Oh, it was just wonderful. Everybody would get out and parade around, and we had festivals and all this good stuff. And I decided that I wanted to do something else, so I decided I'm going to go to Europe. And for the first time in Europe, I traveled around and ended up in Spain, in Madrid, and I worked for the Stars and Stripes newspaper, which was the Army newspaper, calling for advertisements to the Americans. And then I would ski, which was my passion then, ski in Navacerrada. And I was skiing in Navacerrada one time, and these Spanish ski team was practicing there, and they were all stupid, fooling around, and knocked me down, knocked me out on the slopes. And all of a sudden I heard this, Nancy, Nancy. And I woke up, and it was a doctor from the hospital in New York who was there with his family. And so he got me all straightened out and all that. So I stayed in Spain for a while until I ran out of money. And I had holes in my shoes, which my mother was appalled. So then I moved back, and I went to graduate school for nursing. And I worked in an agency for a while, and I got bored again, and I went to Europe again and just kind of filled around and stayed in London. Loved it, loved London. It was so much fun walking all over. And when I ran out of money again and had holes in my shoes, I came home. And I moved out to Denver to ski. I worked. I escorted infants to the airplane for adoption. And then during the week, I would go skiing. That lasted. And finally, I went home for some reason. And I was 29, 28. At that time, had traveled all over. And I decided, well, I needed to lie down someplace. And I got to Warren. And I met my husband in Warren. And we had 3 children. They're all wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. My grandkids are the greatest things on earth. That's my long, sad story. It goes longer and longer, but I've forgotten half of what I've done. Anyway, I'm here, and happy I'm here, actually. It's a nice place to be. I just have fun. I always have fun.
It sounds like you lived a very eventful, interesting life.
Well, I think I had. At that time, it was really, because it was, nobody traveled by themselves. And it was relatively safe. So it didn't bother me. When I was living in New York City, it didn't bother me at all. At one point, when I came back from Europe one time, it was during the 70s, and they were having the riots. And I did encounter some stuff on the subways, which should not have been happening. One time as young girls, we went to Wilson Stilt's bar, and they threw us out. The bartender came over, and he said, "Now, girls, it's time for you to go." He said, "We don't want you here. I mean, we want you here, but we don't want you here because of the riots, and you're white, and you're in a bar. So we had to leave there too. So I was in the 70s in the riots and all that good stuff, good, bad stuff. I stopped running around New York at that time by myself.
Did you have roommates when you lived in New York?
Actually, I had a roommate who wasn't a roommate. She had the apartment in the village, but it was really nothing. She would lend me the apartment in the summertime because she was also a nurse and an actress. And she would go to Colorado to act and then come back here in the wintertime and work as a nurse and then go to Colorado to work on the plays. I had a friend and he had a motorcycle and I had a wagon, a station wagon. We used to transfer stuff from playhouses from one place to another, stage stuff. And we go in and stand in the backs and watch all the plays and just whatever we wanted to do in New York, we just went in and did it. I went to all the outdoor concerts in the park, and it was fun. I loved New York. And I liked Philadelphia too, but I wasn't doing a whole lot of running in Philadelphia because I was in graduate school. And I was more intent on doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
At that time, were there many other women going to graduate school?
In nursing, yes, of course. But not too many, no. You did not see too many on the campus. Now, the graduate school, we were in our own departments, so you didn't see anybody from the other apartments, except we were in the business school also. But there were no girls there. We were the only ones. You're right. There were very few girls.
Was there anything about the way you were raised that allowed you to have the confidence to be able to go do that?
My father said, number one, all the girls have to have a profession, period. And there are 5 of us there. And of course, the boys were expected to. But the girls had to have a profession. Number one. Number 2, you have to get out of Warren. And so all 8 of us left. Now, my one sister and brother did come back, and I came back later on in life. But all of us left, and we worked outside the town in cities. But yes, he was very, very forward in that way, that women had to make their own way in case something happened. But that was the reason, in case something happened to your husband. It wasn't, oh, you're going to be good at a sport or a CEO or something like that.
It was more of a fallback plan.
Absolutely.
But it was important for him, for everyone to leave Warren.
Yes. He wanted the exposure. He wanted us out, seeing new things, doing new things. He worried. I know he did. I asked him one day what he did with her kids running around and doing all this stuff. And he said, I pray a lot, he said. And he did. All of us are healthy.
Do you have an older brother or sister?
I have an older brother. Mm-hmm.
Had your older brother already left?
Yes, he had left. I was the girl that started it all. All my sisters did the same thing. They would go to college and they all started skiing and they all started going all over the world and traveling.
Well, and it sounds like your family made it a value and a priority.
Absolutely. They took us to places too.
As a family?
Yeah,
you traveled?
Well, we would go to New York to the shows and museums and all that stuff. It's where we loved to go. We would go to the lake. But most of the time, at that time, most of the kids were going to camps. So we would go to a camp for 2 months or 3 weeks or whenever.
Was it hard for you to leave when it was time for you to go?
College was the first year, yeah. Oh, yeah, the first year. And my father emphatically said I would have to stay until Thanksgiving. I did, and I stayed for the rest of the time.
Did you experience some culture shock or homesickness when you got to New York?
No. I was so excited to go to New York. My mother's appalled. Oh, you're going to get killed. You're going to get killed. The first week, one of the other new girls, and I have no idea who she is, I just persuaded her to go for a walk with me to go out and see what it looked like. So we go out. Now, Columbia University is a huge place. And we walk around the entrance, and here comes a guy, and he has a knife in his head, sticking out of his head right here, just sticking right out. And he's walking into the into the emergency. And the little girl took one look and ran back into the nursing building. I don't know whether she ever came out or not. But I loved it. I loved the pace. I loved everything.
You went to two very prestigious schools, Columbia and Penn. When you were in high school, did you have ambitions of going to these Ivy League schools?
Not all my other brothers and sisters did. I mean, they went to Cornell and Syracuse and all over the place, Yale. The reason I was in Columbia, I went to a junior college, and I told my mother I wanted to be a nurse. Well, she cried and all that stuff and fell apart. I'm going to get killed in New York, etc. Anyway, I looked around, and my uncle was a doctor in New York. So I thought, well, I'll go to New York, and I'm going to go to Columbia. And that's where I went. I just applied and got in and did my thing. And the reason I went to my graduate school was I looked up and they didn't have to do a paper. I hate papers. I hate writing papers. And we used to write papers all the time and just mess. Ugh. And I didn't type because at that time, girls didn't type unless you were in typing class in high school. And that was it. That's my story.
So then, did you go to become a nurse?
I did. I wanted to do something because my father demanded it. And I was very interested in medicine. If I thought about it, I probably would have been a doctor if I thought about it, but I didn't. I wanted to get out. First of all, I wanted to get out and travel and do stuff and see things and just get out of my early lifestyle. And I did, but that came before I thought about medical school, and I wasn't going to go back because I was having too much fun. It's those decisions you make when you're young that turn out differently.
How long did you end up living in Spain?
About a year. Yeah.
And you had a job where you were able to speak English?
Oh, yeah. Some Spanish, but I don't speak Spanish anymore. It's just a mumbling Spanish. But I did like Spain. I liked Madrid. I thought Madrid was a fun city. And I dated a guy who was, he was an American, and he was making, we're talking about the 70s, which he was making Danish furniture for the Spanish. A little bizarre, I know, and that's what he was doing. And he was had his little workshop there. And at one time, he had a motor scooter. And I got on the back of it, and we're in the middle of Madrid. And he pulled up and left me in the middle of Madrid, in the middle of the street right there. I was so embarrassed. All these cars are beeping, and I'm sitting there. So, no, he didn't leave me. He came back and got me. But
he was playing a prank?
Yeah. No, he didn't know he'd done it.
Oh, he didn't know he left you?
Yeah, he left me down there. And let's see. What else can I tell you? I have stories, but I can't remember them. Sometimes it's hard. It comes out very hard.
Yeah. And then you lived in Denver for a little while?
Oh, yeah. I lived in Denver close to a year or two. I was in public health nursing, and one of the jobs was I had to go out. Well, when I was in nursing, I did public health in school, and it was in the Bronx. And I'd have to go into these homes and check. This is in the 60s and 70s. Oh, 60s. It was 60s. I had to go into the homes with a flashlight and look for rats. If there was a newborn in the bed, I looked for rats. If I saw any rats, they'd take the baby out. You'd go in and you'd have, well, I don't want to talk about those. That's too icky graphic, isn't it? Yeah. You can cut it out.
I mean, it's real. No, I don't think we need to cut it out. I think it's real. And that's, I mean, that was what was happening, and that's what you went through.
Yeah. And I was walking down the street, and I saw these two guys coming down, and I knew they were on heroin. I knew it. You can tell by their walks. They have different walks. And they came up and they grabbed me. And at that time, that age, we carried doctor's bags that had needles in them. And they wanted the needles. And they were grabbing me and taking my bag away and tearing this. And somebody from the upstairs, up in the high building, yelled out, "Nurse, nurse, a baby's sick. Hurry up, get up here." And he came back. He ran downstairs, grabbed me and dragged me in his apartment and saved me from these creeps.
You went and you traveled and you lived all different places and experienced life. And then you moved back to Warren, and that's when you met your husband.
Yeah, and things seemed to stop because it didn't stop. I had my babies and the rest of my life, I guess. Then I had my babies, and I became a school nurse. And I was in Sheffield, Tidioute, Allegheny Valley, Lacey, which has been torn down, Scandia, which has been torn down. I loved it, loved it, loved it. I went all over the county. So all the kids there are so cute, so sweet. I love the kids. The teenagers, just helping them was really fun. And we just had a ball. I had one little tiny kindergartner came in, and the teacher said, "Now, she put this teeny tiny bead in her ear." I said, "Oh, what happened?" The little girl spoke up and she said, "Oh, don't worry about that." She said, "I just turned my head and hit it with my fist, and it came out the other ear."
No.
So, okay. I'd like to check that with your doctor. I just loved them all.
What's your husband's name?
Ex-husband.
Ex-husband.
Yeah.
What's your ex-husband's name?
Maurice.
How did you and Maurice meet?
Actually, we grew up together. Well, he was a couple years younger. You know how that goes. But he was cousin of a friend of mine and used to live in Warren. And when I came back, we got married. It was very nice. Really, really, very nice.
Did you decide what color you'd like to go with?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, let's do black.
You want black?
Sure, let's do black and green.
Okay.
Something different. Everybody came with these beautiful nails. I'm going to show mine.
Mix it up.
Yeah, might as well. And I've never had a colored fingernail, so.
Do you remember going out on your first date with Maurice?
Oh, dear. I don't think there was a first date. We hung out with a group. And I think that's how most of us did it, is that we'd hang out with a group and then, side with one of them. And, if you liked him, he would be just, but I just have always known him. And I think we went out for dinner.
Did he propose?
It's funny. He said to me, this is his proposal, "Do you want to be another Nancy Cashman?" There was one already in the family. Now, isn't that romantic?
How long were the two of you married?
20 years, around 20. It was good. It was good until it grew apart, that's all. And we didn't pay much attention to it. And that's what happens.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. They all live out of town, so I don't have anyone here, except my sister lives here part-time. I have 6 grandchildren, ages 12 to 22, and they are sweethearts. They just own my heart.
What are your kids' names?
John, David, and Elizabeth. Elizabeth works at Milton Hershey School for disadvantaged children. She and her husband are house parents. It's just an amazing place. It's just amazing what they do. And my other two boys are boring bankers, but they're neat. They like their sports and stuff.
Did you go on family vacations when they were young?
Oh, yeah. Oh, every summer we went to Lake Erie. And they loved it there. Mm-hmm. And when they got older, they had bonfires on the beach, and the kids just all loved it. I can't wait till they see these nail polishes. Oh, I see the green is going to be this color. Well, can I have pink?
Oh, yeah.
Red or something that's going to...
Yeah, that's more contrast.
Contrasting.
Yeah.
Let's do the pink. Yeah. Let's get loud here. I can't... I'm not crazy, really. I've had a stroke, but that's about it. Oh, everything else you can imagine, but I'm not crazy.
When did you have a stroke?
Year and a half ago, about a year ago, yeah.
Wow.
I know. I was speech.
What's the recovery been like?
It's been pretty good. It doesn't stop me, I'll tell you that. I talk as long all the time.
What did having a stroke feel like?
Funny and bizarre. Oh my goodness, you can't think of what you're saying. I mean, you can't get it out. You know what you're saying, and it makes you mad and bizarre. And you just, it's so unexpected. What happened to me?
Were you here when it happened?
No, I was in the hospital. Thank goodness.
So you were already in the hospital when you had a stroke?
Yeah, I'd fractured my hip.
Thinking about your marriage,
Mm-hmm.
how did you know that it was over?
Arguing. I think that's what it had. I think it was the argument. And we weren't doing anything. We weren't talking to each other. We weren't really seeing each other. We were just doing our own thing. And I don't want to go into detail, but I think that's about it. I don't mind talking about it because everybody gets this pretty much the same if you go through a divorce. But
how old were the kids?
My youngest was 13 and my oldest had just started college. And my middle was a junior in high school. So it was they were pretty... I did read once, though, it's very bad to have a break of a marriage when a child goes away first year.
What was the hardest part of getting divorced?
I guess the hurt. You have this idea of your life and your future is going to be only one, or going to wait, and it's going to be blissful, and you're going to do this or that or whatever. And that's not going to be. And you've dreamt about this for so long that it's gone. And now you have to rebuild it, and that's scary.
Looking back at that time, is there anything that you think could have made it easier for you?
You mean a divorce, or
when you're going
or saving the marriage?
I mean, when you were going through the divorce.
I don't know. I went to see a psychiatrist, and I made him go one time. I didn't send my kids to see them because she felt I could take care of the kids. A psychiatrist, not. So that helped a lot. I don't think there was anything that could have been done. I mean, we did communicate, not at first, but of course, but later on, and now we communicate all the time. I mean, not all the time.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Somebody once told me, they said, stay happy. And I always thought that was weird, but I try. I wouldn't say it was a piece of advice somebody gave me.
I'm almost 40 years old. Do you have any words of wisdom or life advice for me?
40 years old. Oh, that's so young. It's so much fun. 40 was a fun time. 30, 40, 20, 30, and 40 were good times. Oh, you're pretty much free. I say I didn't have my babies. I didn't have my children until I was late. I was 40 when I had my last one, almost 40. Oh, it was so much fun. Yes. And busy? I don't know. I think every decade has a special thing to it. You know, it's never one thing. And every decade you get different. You do different things. You think differently, but you're still yourself inside. And I just think that it's interesting. I love interesting.
What's something you want young people to know about getting older?
It's not hard. It's, no, you better accept it. Accept it and go with it. Have fun with what you have.
What is your age?
I'm 83.
How does it feel to be 83?
Sore. I'm sure they've told you time and time again that inside, in your brain, you're still 20. I mean, your body's falling apart, but that brain is still going, and you need to go. Keep going. Thank you. Thank you. They look lovely, and I know everybody's going to love them too.
We're not quite done. We're going to put a top coat on still. Oh. Did your mother work when you were growing up?
No. She worked in the home and did as very well as she could. She had help. She had 4 children in Ohio and then 4 children in Warren.
Your parents lived in Ohio before they moved to Warren?
Yes, they lived in Ohio, and they had 4 children before the war and 4 children after the war. And my father went to the war. I remember World War II when we would all get under the tables while they're rolling bandages at the armory, and all the women would be there rolling bandages and the margarine tabs to color the margarine and the bags. And I remember the fire raids. Oh, my goodness. They would come at, I don't know, sometime during the night, usually when we're awake, because we used to go upstairs and peek under the blackout shades to see if there were going to be any enemy planes coming. I mean, we were kids. But they had the blackout shades on all the windows and all the doors. Oh, I remember the day the war was over. In the old houses, they had little cubicles that had the telephone in it. That's how they built the house for the telephone. And she's sitting in the cubicles, and all of a sudden a phone flies out of her hands, and she yells, "The war is over, the war is over." And everybody's yelling and screaming, "The war is over." And then we all went down to get my father from the train, and everybody was singing. They were singing Army songs and all that. And the train pulled in, and he got out, and I remember I was so proud because of the 4, he picked me up and put me on his shoulders. Now I could see everybody. It was just so wonderful. It really was. And it's just so nice to have him home.
Do you remember how long he was gone?
No, I don't. I had to have been a couple of years because we were living in Lancaster, Ohio, and we had this house. It was in the country. It's now in the city. That's how population has grown. Anyway, we lived down in the country, and my father once brought a cow into the house to show my mother. And then they couldn't get him out because he went in forward and couldn't turn him around. Anyway, we lived in Lancaster and then moved into my grandmother's house during the war because it was easier and she had help so Mom could take care of 4 kids. And that's where we sat for the war. Oh, I'll tell you the story of Hawaii. Mm-hmm. I went to Hawaii with my mother. My grandmother had a stroke, and my mother didn't want to fly by herself, and I was a junior in high school. So we went to Hawaii. We went out for dinner, and we were all dressed up, and we were sitting there, and a gentleman came over and asked my mother to dance. I said, "Go ahead, dance, Mom, go ahead." So she gets up and dances, and all of a sudden, she turns around and comes back and sits down. I said, "What's the matter? What happened?" She said, "Oh, he didn't want to dance anymore. He found out I had 8 kids."
Was your grandmother living in Hawaii at the time?
No, she had the stroke in Hawaii. And
while she was on vacation?
While she was on vacation, yes. She was 60-something. She was going around the world. And ended up, I had an aunt and uncle who lived in Hawaii, and she was staying with them for a while and had a stroke.
What did your father do for work?
He worked at the Warren Car Company. He owned the Warren Car Company. Nobody wanted it, so he sold it. None of his sons.
This is the end of our manicure, but I've really enjoyed talking to you. Anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, I don't know. I'm pretty well talked out, and that's unusual.
Well, this was really fun getting to know you.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah. And this is quite a fun manicure.
Isn't this lovely?
Very
Yes.
unique.
Very 83-year-old woman with black nails. That's what I like.
That's great. Thank you for listening to Manny's with Grannies. I hope you enjoyed learning about someone else and maybe even learned a little about yourself.